What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to be blindsided by a host who refuses to show even basic respect? In just 51 seconds of pure tension, Piers Morgan's smug attitude would crumble as Denzel Washington delivered a masterclass in standing up for yourself. This is the story of an interview that went so wrong, so fast, that it ended with security being called and a legendary actor walking off set. The studio lights were bright that evening as Denzel Washington walked onto the set. He was there to talk about his latest film, a project he'd poured his heart into. The audience clapped as he took his seat across from Piers Morgan, who sat behind his desk with that familiar look on his face, the one that said he thought he was the smartest person in the room. "Denzel Washington, welcome to the show," Piers said, barely looking up from his notes. "Thank you for having me," Denzel replied, his voice calm and measured as always. But right from the start, something felt off. Piers didn't ask about the film. He didn't ask about Denzel's career. Instead, he leaned back in his chair with a smirk and said, "So, let's talk about why you think you're still relevant in today's Hollywood." The audience went quiet. You could hear people shifting in their seats. Denzel's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed just slightly. "I'm sorry, what was that?" Denzel asked. "You heard me," Piers said, waving his hand dismissively. "I mean, you've had a great run, don't get me wrong, but the industry has moved on. Younger actors, fresh faces. Where do you fit in all of that?" Denzel took a slow breath. "I'm here to talk about my film, Piers, a film that I'm very proud of. Maybe we could start there?" But Piers wasn't interested in the film. He shuffled his papers and continued. "See, this is what I find interesting about actors of your generation. You all seem to think the world owes you something just because you've been around for a while." The audience started murmuring. Some people were shaking their heads. This wasn't what anyone had signed up for. "I've never thought the world owed me anything," Denzel said, his voice still calm but with an edge now. "I've worked for everything I have." "Have you, though?" Piers shot back. "Or have you just been lucky? Right place, right time?" Denzel leaned forward slightly. "Luck? You think 30 years of work is luck?" "I think," Piers said, pointing his pen at Denzel like he was scolding a child, "that you've benefited from a system that props up certain people, and now that system is changing, and you can't handle it." "What system are you talking about?" Denzel asked. "Oh, come on," Piers said with a laugh. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The old boys club, the Hollywood elite. All of you patting each other on the back, giving each other awards." Denzel sat back in his chair. "So you invited me here to insult me?" "I invited you here for a real conversation," Piers replied. "Not the usual softball interview where everyone tells you how wonderful you are. I thought you could handle it." "Handle what exactly?" Denzel asked. "Handle you being disrespectful? Handle you making assumptions about my career, my work, my life?" Piers rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go. The victim card. I should have known." That's when you could see something shift in Denzel's face. The patience was wearing thin. "I'm not playing any card, Piers," Denzel said, his voice lower now, more serious. "I came here in good faith. I came here to have a conversation. But you're not interested in a conversation. You just want to hear yourself talk." "That's rich coming from you," Piers snapped back. "You actors are all the same. You live in your little bubble, completely disconnected from reality." "And what reality is that?" Denzel asked. "The reality where the rest of us have to work real jobs," Piers said, "where we don't get paid millions to pretend to be someone else, where we actually contribute something meaningful to society." The audience gasped. Several people stood up, looking angry. But Denzel remained seated, his hands folded in his lap. "So, acting isn't meaningful?" Denzel asked quietly. "Not compared to real work, no," Piers said with a shrug. "Real work?" Denzel repeated. "Like what you do, sitting behind a desk, asking insulting questions, trying to provoke people for ratings?" Piers's face turned red. "I provide commentary. I hold people accountable. I ask the questions that others are afraid to ask." "You don't ask questions," Denzel said, his voice rising slightly. "You attack. There's a difference." "I attack?" Piers laughed. "That's funny. You can't handle a little pushback, so you call it an attack." "Pushback?" Denzel said. "You've done nothing but disrespect me since I sat down. You haven't asked me one genuine question. You haven't shown 1 ounce of professionalism." "Maybe if you weren't so thin-skinned," Piers started to say, but Denzel cut him off. "Thin-skinned? I've been in this industry for decades. I've dealt with critics, with rejection, with failure. I've earned my place, and I don't need to justify that to you or anyone else. Earned your place? Piers scoffed. Please. You've been handed everything. Handed everything? Denzel's voice was sharp now. You don't know anything about my life. You don't know where I came from. You don't know what I've been through. I know enough, Piers said dismissively. No, you don't, Denzel said, leaning forward again. You sit here in your comfortable chair, in your expensive suit, and you judge people you've never met. You make assumptions about their lives, their struggles, their achievements, and you do it all with this smug attitude like you're better than everyone else. I am better than some people, Piers said with a smirk. That was it. That was the moment. You could see it in Denzel's face. The decision had been made. You know what, Piers? Denzel said, standing up slowly. I've had enough. Sit down, Piers said, trying to sound commanding, but his voice cracked slightly. We're not done here. Yes, we are, Denzel said calmly. He started to remove his microphone. You can't just leave, Piers said, his face getting redder. This is my show. Then maybe you should learn how to treat your guests with respect, Denzel replied. Piers stood up too now, pointing at Denzel. You're being childish. You're being unprofessional. Denzel stopped and looked at Piers dead in the eyes. I'm being unprofessional? That's interesting. Because from where I'm standing, you've been nothing but unprofessional since the moment I walked in here. I'm doing my job, Piers insisted. Your job is to ambush people, to belittle them, to make them feel small so you can feel big? Denzel asked. My job is to get to the truth, Piers said. The truth? Denzel laughed, but there was no humor in it. You wouldn't know the truth if it hit you in the face. All you care about is creating drama, getting a reaction. You don't care about truth. You don't care about your guests. You only care about yourself. That's not true, Piers said, but his voice was weaker now. Isn't it? Denzel asked. Look at how you've conducted this entire interview. You haven't asked me about my film. You haven't asked me about my process. You haven't asked me anything that would actually inform your audience. All you've done is try to tear me down. I was trying to have a real conversation, Piers said defensively. No, you weren't, Denzel said firmly. You were trying to make yourself look important by making me look small. But here's the thing, Piers. You can't make me look small. I know who I am. I know what I've accomplished. And I don't need your validation. Piers's mouth opened and closed like a fish. For once, he seemed to be at a loss for words. I've been doing this a long time, Denzel continued. I've sat through hundreds of interviews. Good ones, bad ones, everything in between. But I've never, and I mean never, been treated with such blatant disrespect. If you can't handle tough questions, Piers started. Tough questions? Denzel interrupted. You haven't asked me any tough questions. Tough questions require thought. They require research. They require actually caring about the answers. All you've done is insult me and my profession. The audience started clapping, softly at first, then louder. They were on Denzel's side. Piers noticed, and his face twisted with anger. Oh, so now you're going to turn my audience against me? I'm not doing anything, Denzel said. They can see what's happening. They're not blind. Get out then, Piers said suddenly, his voice loud and sharp. If you're so offended, just leave. Go on. Walk off my show like a coward. Denzel smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. A coward? Is that what you think? That standing up for myself makes me a coward? Running away makes you a coward, Piers said. I'm not running away, Denzel said slowly. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to subject myself to your disrespect any longer. There's a difference. You signed a contract to be here, Piers said desperately. And you had a responsibility to conduct yourself professionally, Denzel countered. Looks like we both fell short today. Piers slammed his hand on the desk. You can't just leave in the middle of my show. Watch me, Denzel said simply. He turned to walk off the set. The audience erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering, whistling. It was clear who they supported. Fine, Piers shouted over the noise. Leave. Show everyone what a diva you really are. Denzel stopped and turned back around. The look on his face made the entire studio go silent again. A diva? Denzel said, his voice dangerously quiet. You want to call me a diva? After the way you've behaved tonight? I've been nothing but fair, Piers insisted, but his voice was shaking now. Fair? Denzel walked back toward the desk, not in a threatening way, but in a way that commanded attention. Let me tell you what fair looks like. Fair is treating people with basic human decency. Fair is asking real questions instead of trying to create conflict. Fair is recognizing that the person sitting across from you is a human being, not a prop for your ego. I don't need lessons from you, Piers said. Clearly you do, Denzel replied, because what you've done tonight is not journalism. It's not entertainment. It's just sad. Get off my stage, Piers said through gritted teeth. Gladly, Denzel said. But before I go, let me say this. You had an opportunity tonight, an opportunity to have a real conversation, to learn something, to share something meaningful with your audience, and you wasted it. You wasted it because you were more interested in trying to make yourself feel important than actually doing your job. My job is to challenge people, Piers said weakly. No, Denzel said. Your job is to inform, to enlighten, to bring out the best in your guests. And you failed, spectacularly. Piers opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked around desperately at his producers, at the audience, at anyone who might help him, but no one moved. You know what the sad part is? Denzel continued. This could have been good. We could have had a real conversation about cinema, about storytelling, about the craft of acting. But you weren't interested in any of that. You just wanted a moment, a viral moment, something controversial. Well, congratulations, you got it. I am not the villain here, Piers said, his voice desperate now. Then why does everyone in this room think you are? Denzel asked, gesturing to the audience. Piers looked out at the crowd. They were all staring at him with disappointment, some with anger. He'd lost them completely. This is unbelievable, Piers muttered. What's unbelievable is that you still don't see what you did wrong, Denzel said. That's the real tragedy here. I asked tough questions, Piers said again, clinging to that defense. You asked insulting questions designed to provoke? Denzel corrected. There's a difference. A good interviewer knows how to challenge someone without disrespecting them. You clearly haven't learned that skill. I've been doing this for years, Piers said. That makes it even worse, Denzel replied, because it means you should know better by now. The audience laughed at that. Not a mean laugh, but a laugh of agreement. They were completely on Denzel's side. Piers's face was now bright red. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? I don't think I'm better than anyone, Denzel said, but I do think I deserve respect, and I think every guest who comes on this show deserves respect, something you seem incapable of giving. I've had hundreds of guests, Piers protested, and how many of them have walked off? Denzel asked. Piers didn't answer. He just stared at Denzel with barely contained fury. That's what I thought, Denzel said. Maybe it's time for some self-reflection, Piers. Maybe it's time to ask yourself why this keeps happening. This doesn't keep happening, Piers snapped. Really? Denzel raised an eyebrow. Because from what I've heard, I'm not the first person to have a problem with your interviewing style. Those people were too sensitive, Piers said. Or maybe you're too aggressive, Denzel suggested. Maybe you're too focused on making yourself the star of the show instead of letting your guests shine. This is my show, Piers shouted. Then act like a professional. Denzel shouted back, his voice booming through the studio. The audience went completely silent. Even Piers seemed taken aback. Denzel rarely raised his voice, so when he did, people listened. I have been nothing but respectful to you, Denzel continued, his voice lower but no less intense. I showed up on time. I was prepared. I was ready to have a conversation. And you've done nothing but attack me from the moment I sat down, so don't you dare try to make me the bad guy here. I'm not, Piers stammered. Yes, you are, Denzel said. That's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to make it seem like I'm being unreasonable, like I'm being difficult. But everyone in this room can see the truth. The truth is you can't handle criticism, Piers said, trying one last time to regain control. Criticism? Denzel laughed. You think what you did was criticism? You didn't critique anything. You just insulted me and my career. That's not criticism. That's just mean. I call it like I see it, Piers said. Then maybe you need to get your eyes checked, Denzel replied, because what you're seeing isn't reality. The audience laughed again. Piers was losing this battle badly, and everyone knew it. Are you done? Piers asked through clenched teeth. Almost, Denzel said. He took a deep breath. I want to say something to your audience, if that's okay. Be my guest, Piers said sarcastically. Denzel turned to face the audience directly. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm sorry you had to witness this. I'm sorry that what should have been a pleasant evening turned into this. But I hope you understand why I'm leaving. Some things are more important than promoting a movie. Self-respect is one of them. The audience erupted in applause again, louder than before. Many people were on their feet, Some were even cheering Denzel's name. Denzel turned back to Piers. "I wish you the best, Piers. I really do. But I hope you learn from this. I hope you realize that you can't treat people this way and expect them to just take it." "Get out," Piers said quietly. "I'm going," Denzel said. He started to walk off the set again. "You'll regret this," Piers called after him. Denzel stopped one more time. He looked back over his shoulder. "The only thing I regret is agreeing to come on this show in the first place." And with that, Denzel Washington walked off the set. The audience gave him a standing ovation as he left. Some people were actually crying. They had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen a man stand up for himself with dignity and grace. They had seen someone refuse to be bullied or disrespected, even on national television. Piers stood behind his desk, looking lost. His producers were running around frantically, trying to figure out what to do. The cameras were still rolling, catching every moment of the chaos. "Well," Piers said, trying to regain some composure, "that was certainly dramatic, but the audience wasn't having it. They were booing now, loudly." "Oh, come on," Piers said, holding up his hands. "He's the one who walked off." "Because you were rude," someone from the audience shouted. "I was doing my job." Piers shot back. "Your job is to be respectful," another person yelled. Piers looked around desperately. This was not how things were supposed to go. He was supposed to be in control. He was supposed to be the one with the power, but somewhere along the way, he'd lost it completely. "Let's take a break," Piers said weakly to the cameras. But even as he said it, you could hear more commotion off stage. Voices raised. Denzel was apparently having words with the producers, and from the sound of it, he was not happy about how things had gone down. Security guards appeared from the sides of the stage. At first, it looked like they might be there for Denzel. But no, they walked right past where he was standing and headed straight for Piers. "What's going on?" Piers asked, his voice panicked now. One of the producers walked onto the stage, her face serious. She leaned in and whispered something to Piers. His face went from red to white in an instant. "You can't be serious," Piers said. The producer nodded. She gestured to the security guards. "This is ridiculous," Piers said, his voice rising. "This is my show." "Not anymore, the folks," producer said loud enough for everyone to hear. The audience gasped. Some people started whispering excitedly to each other. This was getting even more dramatic. "You're kicking me off my own show?" Piers asked, incredulous. "We've had complaints before," the producer said calmly. "But this is the final straw. What you did tonight was unacceptable." "I was doing my job," Piers repeated desperately. "No," the producer said. "You were being cruel. There's a difference." The security guards moved closer. Piers looked around wildly, as if searching for someone who would defend him, but there was no one. "This is insane," Piers muttered. "What's insane is thinking you could treat guests like that and face no consequences," the producer replied. Piers started to argue again, but one of the security guards put a hand on his shoulder. It wasn't rough, but it was clear. It was time for him to go. "Fine," Piers said, shaking off the guard's hand. "I'll leave." "But you're all making a huge mistake." "The mistake was ours for letting this go on as long as we did," the producer said. Piers grabbed his papers from the desk and stormed off the stage in the opposite direction from where Denzel had exited. The audience watched in stunned silence. Then, slowly, they started clapping again, not for Piers, for what had just happened, for justice being served, in a way. Backstage, Denzel was talking with some of the crew members. He looked tired but calm. He'd said what he needed to say. He'd stood up for himself. And in doing so, he'd stood up for every guest who had ever been mistreated on that show. One of the makeup artists approached him. "That was amazing," she said quietly. "Thank you." "For what?" Denzel asked. "For saying what we've all been thinking for years," she replied. Denzel nodded. "Sometimes you just have to stand up, even when it's uncomfortable." Another crew member came over. "I'm sorry about what happened out there." "It's not your fault," Denzel said. "You all did your jobs. He just didn't do his." Back in the studio, the audience was slowly being ushered out. They were all talking excitedly, pulling out their phones, already sharing what they'd just witnessed. This was going to be everywhere by morning, maybe even sooner. In his dressing room, Piers sat alone, staring at himself in the mirror. His phone was buzzing constantly, but he ignored it. For the first time in a long time, he looked uncertain, vulnerable even. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "What?" he called out. The door opened, and the same producer from earlier stepped in. "We need to talk." "I don't want to talk," Piers said. "Well, you need to listen then," she said, closing the door behind her. What happened tonight can never happen again. It won't, Piers said bitterly, because apparently I don't have a show anymore. That hasn't been decided yet, the producer said, but there will be consequences. There have to be. He walked off, Piers said weakly. Because you gave him no choice, the producer replied. You were hostile from the start. You insulted him repeatedly. You showed him zero respect. I was trying to get him to open up, Piers insisted. By attacking him? The producer asked. That's not how you get someone to open up. That's how you make them shut down. Piers didn't respond. Deep down, he knew she was right, but admitting it felt impossible. Look, the producer said, her voice softening slightly. You're talented, you're smart, but you've let your ego take over, and tonight, it cost you. It cost you big time. What do you want me to do? Piers asked quietly. I want you to think about what happened tonight, she said. Really think about it, and then decide if this is the kind of interviewer you want to be. With that, she left the room. Piers sat there in silence, alone with his thoughts. Meanwhile, Denzel was leaving the building. A small crowd had gathered outside. People who had heard what happened or had been in the audience. They cheered when they saw him. Denzel waved but didn't stop to talk. He got into his car and drove away, leaving the chaos behind. Inside the car, his phone rang. It was his publicist. I know, Denzel said before she could speak. It's going to be everywhere. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine, Denzel said. Better than fine, actually. I did what I had to do. The studio is already calling, she said. They want to issue a statement. Tell them the truth, Denzel said. That I was treated disrespectfully and I chose to leave. That's all they need to say. Are you sure? She asked. Positive, Denzel replied. I'm not going to hide from this. I'm not going to apologize.